Section 2. The integral, a general model. This section will focus on the integral. Then, in the following section, we will focus on the emerging definition of the sovereign integral consciousness. Paragraph 40. As mentioned in Section 1, consciousness is a synthesis of two completely antithetical identities, sovereign and integral. While we now, at least theoretically, understand the general structure of the sovereign, it is time to turn our attention to the integral. If a sovereign was a moth, then the integral would be a flame. The integral is the primary attractor that inspires the sovereign's desire to experience and express the sovereign integral consciousness. It is the underlying catalyst of a time-based transformation, drawing individual, infinite uniqueness into the synthesis of unity and individuality. Paragraph 41. Before we embark on a definition, let us review the dictionary's choice of words. Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Definition of integral. 1a, very important and necessary. 1b, essential to completeness. 1c, formed as a unit with another part. 1d, composed of constituent parts. 1e, lacking nothing essential. Paragraph 42. The integral in this definition is more closely aligned with item 1b, essential to completeness. However, to understand the integral, one must understand the social program, because the social program is the integral in the realms of duality, in much the same way as the body ego is the sovereign in duality. In being human, we are all more expert in the social program than we are in the core, higher dimensional integral. Paragraph 43. The social program is subjective. That is, each individual experiences their social program based on their sovereign's unique understanding of itself and the integral. The social program for human beings is shaped by institutional and natural causes. The integral's institutional elements are education, government, religion, culture. The integral's natural elements associated with the body are DNA, collective memory, instinctual intelligence, nature. The integral's natural elements associated with the ego are family, friends, mentors, and social groups. Paragraph 44. Collectively, these elements influence the individual social program of a particular species distilled down to a sovereign. For example, while a mouse's social program does not possess institutional elements, it is nonetheless rich in the natural elements, as categorized above. The diagram on the next page represents the different focal points of the social program depending on the complexity of the species. Paragraph 45. The human social program is the only one that is institutionalized, and to the extent that less complex species have an institutional element in their social program, it is derived from humans. In other words, the human institutional elements impact on and become the exclusive institutional element for other species on Earth. Paragraph 46. Each species has its own social program that informs its body ego, dual sovereign. And as is the case with human beings, the social program is unique for each individual expression of a species. The range of that uniqueness correlates to the complexity of the species. In other words, the higher the complexity of the body ego, the more variation in the social program. Paragraph 47. If viewed through the continuum of time, the social program evolves in some cases radically. For example, the human social program in the course of 200 years has evolved from horse and buggy and the telegraph to space travel and internet-tethered cell phones. This technological surge, as we can imagine, has played a significant role in the evolution of the social program, not only for humans, but almost every other species on Earth. Religion and government, however, have evolved at a comparatively slower pace, while culture is somewhere in between. Paragraph 48. It is important to understand, and it is the reason I reiterate once again, that the social program, in the realm of duality, is the literal manifestation of the integral. Therefore, human reality is not an illusion or simulation. It is simply a dilution of the integral consciousness made possible by the proper functioning of duality. Human beings are generally not delusional. It is the unique interrelationship of the body-ego social program that appears delusional, but the sovereign and the integral are truly in control of the dual dimensions of consciousness. They are co-architects of the game of life, whose playing field, in our case, is centered in the third-dimensional reality of Earth in the 21st century. Paragraph 49. This is an important distinction between the sovereign integral consciousness and the religious, spiritual, and metaphysical perspectives. Sovereigns expand in the only direction possible, to the integral. They experience life from countless different perspectives, but always. And this is really the only illusion worth noting, one lifetime at a time, which allows the embodied sovereign to focus on one body-ego social program triad. Paragraph 50. The social program is the controlling force of a free will universe that prevents a species from spiraling into chaos and unretrievable imbalance. Behind the institutional and natural forces that compose the body of the social program, the integral consciousness is unfailingly attracting the planetary level consciousness through each sovereign on all levels of consciousness. The individual body is biology. The individual ego is the social identity and the locus of empirical experience. These personas live within both the sovereign and the social program. We adopt the mental models of the social program, and they adopt us. Paragraph 51. As stated earlier, the social program evolves in the realms of duality. The dual realms possess both the known and the unknown. Within the non-dual realms, there exists the unknowable. It is possible that the social program is only relevant to the dual realms, but the non-dual world is, as just stated, unknowable, and therefore it is possible that the social program extends to all dimensions of existence. Paragraph 52. This lack of finality of a certain destination is simply an outgrowth of the sovereign and integral's existence in duality. But these uncertainties, due mostly to the infinitude of the sovereign and integral, as strange and inexplicable as they may feel now, are natural in the dual realms. We are, after all, students of duality, but as sovereign integrals, we are birthed into the non-dual realms, which to our body ego make each of us, at our core, unknowable to our lifetimes in duality. These realities, understandably, are unnerving for some, if not all of us. Paragraph 53. I would hold true that if you do not feel these aspects of the sovereign integral to be unsettling, you are probably not understanding the fullness of the conceptual model that is being proposed. The social program has been very clear for thousands of years, which conditions the DNA and ancestral tendencies, that human beings are the apex life form on Earth, our solar system, and probably the known universe. Human beings live one life or multiple lives in succession, which ends in either non-existence, purgatory, heaven or hell, karma-free, or eternal bliss. Human beings were locked in a competition to survive and thrive. These were the choices. There was no choice, called the sovereign integral. Paragraph 54. There is an integral of the sovereign, different lifetimes, levels, species, experienced in duality, and then there is a collective integral of all sovereigns. These integrals are never complete, as is the nature of fractals. So in that sense, they are not standard concepts that are fixed in definition concrete. We are all members of the sovereign integral network. And when I use the term we, it is the most inclusive definition that one can imagine. Paragraph 55. This concept sparks a range of new behaviors, but perhaps its most notable behavior is a deepening kinship with all life. The framework of the sovereign integral is inclusive of everything: politics, money, power, ethnicity, injustice, religious competition, etc. It absorbs differences and unifies them in the same instant of realization. This is its power in the worlds of duality. Paragraph 56. My final comment about the integral is related to love. Eventually, everything is. Everyone knows the integral. This is the integral's great perfection. We know it as our unique human reality because that is what the integral is to each sovereign. It is the sovereign's reality in each dimension of consciousness. And while their human experience is similar to that of their neighbors, they are, as a sovereign, perfectly unique in the expression and experience of the integral. Paragraph 57. Love is inclusion and expansion. Love is extending kindness to all expressions of the sovereign. Love is intelligence. Love is alignment. Love is the attraction that pulls the sovereign to the integral. It cannot be any other way, because it is through the heart that the body ego can touch the noble mind of the nondual sovereign. The noble mind is where the faculty lives that enables us to imagine the sovereign integral and how it would live in a human existence. Paragraph 58. The integral is perhaps most closely aligned to the term spirit. However, spirit, as it is commonly used in religion, is a mysterious omnipresence that is the votive force of God, the eyes and ears of the highest. That silent, invisible force that permeates all life, or at least human life. The integral, in contrast, is not really mysterious, but rather misunderstood. After all, it is each of our absolutely unique realities that only we know and can know. So how can that be mysterious? Paragraph 59. The integral's lineage and creation are unknowable to our human counterparts. We are taught that a living intelligence connects us as sovereigns, and that those sovereigns manifest in every life form. We have never been taught that in one's reality, in the moment, the integral is right before our eyes, ears, hands, mouth, nose, feelings, intuition, and imagination. It is present in every nook and cranny that is our unique reality. Paragraph 60. We do not understand this, but it is not mysterious. It is not hidden. It is the opposite of hidden. We, human beings, since our inception on this planet, have not understood. Perhaps in some ancient time, humans as a whole were more connected to some of these concepts. But reading our history, religious and philosophical papers, I have not discovered such a time. The concepts of the sovereign integral, to whatever extent it was known, were always held in small pockets of humanity, where it could be learned without inviting persecution from the state or religious quarters. Paragraph 61. All of our choices in one lifetime culminate to a point in time that we call the moment of reality. It is that place and time where the integral lives most vibrantly, where its energy is vital, its pulse felt, its purpose in our lives better understood. Our life, at this moment, may be a dusty window into the sovereign integral consciousness, but it can be washed and made clear, or at least clearer. Paragraph 62. This paper is a way to see the integral more clearly and appreciate its presence, but it requires one thing. We must be willing to focus. I know for many of us, that is a difficult thing to do in the 21st century. However, if we want to understand the sovereign integral perspective to the point where it is in our step, in our eyes, in our words, in our touch, in our tone, in our thoughts, it will require focus, as this is neither a simple or short bridge to cross. Paragraph 63. I realize that many people believe that truth should be simple. Somehow, all of the multiverse's infinite complexity can be reduced to simple truth. I do not subscribe to that perspective. Neither do I believe that an attainment of truth should require 20 years in a monastery. The place of focus I speak of is a place where we can read, contemplate, draw, write, or whatever we need to do in order to grasp these concepts and carry them inside us for a time. This allows us to experience them, to see if they expand our sense of what is true or possibly true. Paragraph 64. The integral is essential. One could say it is the most essential. It enables a fractal experience for one and all. It is the subjective, responsive teacher that pulls us unerringly to itself. This happens over long periods of time, requiring so many lifetimes as to become impossible to count. It is not desired by any sovereign, deep down, that they rocket themselves to the sovereign integral consciousness. It is not a race. This is a gradual, deliberate, unfolding process that plays out over a vast spacetime. It is within this process that we, as a sovereign, formulate, create, express, evolve, imagine, and transmit love. Paragraph 65. There are many forms of love. It is, as any of us can imagine, a term that is fractal in the same way as the terms sovereign and integral. It is the space that overlaps the sovereign, the integral, duality expressions, and the sovereign integral, non-duality. This space of overlap, the mandorla of empowerment, is love in its purest, knowable form. Its primary feature is to integrate the parts of itself that are separated through duality, while at the same time permitting free will. This is love and intelligence. Paragraph 66. Human love, that love that we consider real here, on the ground, useful, engaging, meaningful, joyful, all of those qualities that we need and value. It is part of our social program. It is love that has been socialized, much more than any other fractal concept, and for this reason, it expresses itself through the human body ego as a force that overcomes, conditions reality, sacrifices, and worships. These are the faces of human love as the collective social program presents it. I realize that any of us could find additional faces of love, but I would place those as secondary to one of the four I have cited. However, I acknowledge that there are many more, and we can debate on which four to place in the corners of the following diagram that better depicts human love. Paragraph 67. The broader point is not how human love is defined, but rather how the archetype or core essence of love lives and functions. The mandorla of empowerment, where the sovereign, the integral, and the sovereign integral overlap, operates a little like elastic bands that allow expansion into new experience. Yet always the attraction to the core, the overlap, remains, and it does not matter how far the expansion or submergence is. This attraction is always kindled. This love is the act of bestowing empowerment on the vessels of the sovereign integral's expansion into duality. It is a wild, free substance that cannot be conditioned, controlled, or owned. It is pure in its expression of the will to integrate, but respectful of all sovereign's free will. Paragraph 68. This love is the very essence of the sovereign integral. It does not feel rejection. It does not consciously transmit or reduce or even stop transmission. It is not on or off. It flows outward from an inward state of harmony with no expectation. It has no intention, It holds no vision. It is without a single atom of a plan. Yet, it is the most powerful force because it unifies in coherence the whole of existence. Paragraph 69. The sovereign, the true, core sovereign, can do anything that is in alignment with the integral. It is the co-creator of the reality it experiences. The human self, body ego, is not consciously creating its reality. It is experiencing it. The sovereign creates its portion, and the integral creates its portion. These realities are mixed together by the embodied dual sovereign to create reality in one lifetime, on one level, in one species, and in one place and time. Reality within the overlap of these identity markers is a distillation of the sovereign integral consciousness within each of us. Paragraph 70. As a student of duality, the sovereign is rarely conscious that it has a collaborator, the integral. There are some of us that overlay intention and belief on the mysterious intermixing of sovereign and integral realities. But these intentions are almost always serving the body ego. They are not the expressions of the sovereign in human reality, seeking the integral experience and expression. Thus, these intentions can tribalize the body ego into glamour and elitism. More separation, not less. Paragraph 71. The sovereign, I am distinguishing between sovereign and our human self, knows that our reality is created as much as it is experienced, and its creation is a conjoined consciousness, the sovereign integral, creating when assembled an infinite quilt of realities that we can call the integral, the kindred spirit that actually empowers us and evokes the expression of love, no matter how dimly, in all of its entity expressions. Paragraph 72. This is not about receptivity, feminine energy, or bold, reflexive action, male energy. This is about intentional and intelligent integration. The result is not defeating our enemies, but rather experiencing the empowerment of love to heal and dissolve differences, or animus, or darkness, or emotional pain. And it is equally the expression of integrative love. Paragraph 73. The moment of reality is vertical, horizontal, and every other angle a beam of light could travel. It is the convergence point. The sovereign integral lives there. This form of love is an integrative intelligence, the vital currency of all realms. It is not the learned intelligence of academia. It is not the intelligence of experience. This love or intelligence is innate, instinctual, as near to us as our skin. We simply do not fully understand how to wield it, how to apply it in our lives, or how to even connect with it. And that is the irony because it is right before us as our reality. Paragraph 74. The sovereign integral is the screen of life that we all face. We look into it and we can experience the body ego enmeshed in the pendulum of duality, or we can experience the harmony of the integral dancing its way into and through our life, always in the moment, always available for us to experience and express. The sovereign is not intent on producing miracles or phenomena of a psychic or magical nature. Instead, it seeks experience and expression from a deeper understanding of itself and the integral. This experience is the ever-deepening sense that the sovereign integral within us is the source of our unique reality. It is actually through this deepening awareness that the miracles arrive. Paragraph 75. Intelligence is a relative thing. We bound our universe not unlike the Lilliputians who bound the giant Gulliver. We do this especially with the multiverse. We confer our intelligence to it, and in doing so, we collectively pull down the shade over the window of the sovereign and close the doorway of the integral. However, this general act, is a large factor in the separation game, otherwise known as the game of life. The separation game will be detailed in a later section. For now, it is only important to know that this game is purposeful and made possible through the intelligence of love. Paragraph 76. The intelligence we assign to the multiverse is evolving through this lens of science. Once a new theory is proven by science to have value, it is shuttled into the hallowed hallways of academia, and it is taught in our educational systems. It becomes the bedrock of our beliefs in how our universe and multiverse operates and functions. Science can only digest so much information at a time, so this intelligence that we confer to the multiverse is slowly evolving. Remember, we went from an Earth-centric belief to a solar-centric belief to a galactic-centric belief to a universe-centric belief to a multiverse theory in a little less than 500 years. Paragraph 77. The main point of all of this is that the multiverse is infinitely more intelligent than we grant it to be. Again, because the lens of science is dual in nature, and the core of our multiverse is nondual, which is to say, the known cannot know the unknowable. We are born into a reality where physical laws imprint on the existence of our species, and we are therefore subject to the slow evolution of perceiving the infinite intelligence of the multiverse and a sovereign's purpose to harmonize with the integral. Paragraph 78. Science will not discover the sovereign integral. It will discover laws that lead them to conclude that the sovereign integral is possible, but not decipherable, visible, capturable, or in any other respect, able to be made explicit by the standards and measurements of science. Science and the empiricism of the five senses can only go so far. This is precisely why the integral exists, because otherwise the sovereign within the body ego would create a social program that would not expand in its philosophic and scientific explorations. Paragraph 79. One of the more esoteric concepts in metaphysics is the harmony of opposites. For example, knowing and unknowing are opposites, and yet they can come into harmony by the sovereign's intention. The intention to create harmony between opposites helps us to locate the balance point where tension is wrung out of the dual system. If that becomes the perspective of the sovereign and the body ego, it can be applied to any concept or thing that is separated as an opposite. Paragraph 80. This is a method to experience the integral, to practice and hold intentions that harmonize the dual nature of the reality we experience, to create and experience relative harmony within a dual system as a collaborator with the integral. It is never perfect. We all have our dark times, when the balance, at least in the moment, seems to have swung too far one way or the other. It is one of the bonding elements of the human condition. It is also one of the ways that the sovereign is encouraged to reach for the integral in order to embody the sovereign integral in duality.